Hello, and welcome to a new episode of the Needle Movers podcast, a podcast that brings you the lessons, books, and concepts we wish we had known earlier on in our lives. As always, your hosts today are myself, Mark Jasons, and my co-host, Valerio Tommaso.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast.
So on this episode, we're going to do one of our deep dive episodes, led by myself truly. And the reason, Val already knows this, but for the benefit of the audience, the reason that I've chosen the topic of today is because I was driving recently and I was behind a car and I saw one of those stuck-on signs at the back of the car that said "Baby on board." And I thought about school buses that have like the children logo on them, and then disabled vehicles where it shows that there's disabled people on. And it came to mind just how it's so necessary to have a sign that says, "Hey, for this vehicle, calm down. Don't be as aggressive as you think you need to be. Don't be like the word that came to my mind, and the topic for the day was really trust, and how if in a society where we trusted everyone, you wouldn't need to put any stickers or symbolism to say, "Hey, I'm a learner driver. Give me some time." that expectation of it all. So yeah, I figured I'd want to spend an episode just, I guess, seeing how much we rely on trust in society in general, in our lives, and what we can do about it. So I guess, Val, question to yourself is, did you ever really pay attention when you see signs on the back of cars that tell you how, well, they don't even say anything besides who's in that vehicle?
Well, as a starting point, I'll be honest, like, your mind really does do wonders in terms of you were driving and suddenly you started thinking about an episode to cover on the podcast. People will be thinking that we're running out of topics at this point.
I know, I'm always thinking. I guess I actually wrote it down. I was just looking at it like,
Whilst you were driving.
What does this mean? What do you look at when you're driving? You don't look at the vehicles around you?
Well, I do look at vehicles, but I don't write things down whilst I'm driving.
I didn't have to write things down while I was driving. I said I wrote it down. I didn't say right away. I was like, you know what? Forget the babies. Just start attacking the road. You missed the question anyway. Like I asked, what do you think when you see the sign?
Well, I guess I do look at the signs on the cars, specifically learners. I'm not saying I'm become one of those impatient people that starts to try and overtake the learners at every possible second. However, I do find myself being a little bit more impatient when I see that sign, so I'm not sure how useful it is, but it does give you warning around who the person driving is and what the expectations are.
That's more interesting. You see a learner sign and you're like, oh, I'm more impatient than I was a moment ago.
100%.
So wait, if they didn't have the sign, why? I'm now way more curious about, how does the fact that they're not going to be capable of driving to your skill level,
because the sign is telling me to be disappointed already. It's like, hello,
I do think that's
behind me. You're gonna be disappointed in a second because I'm gonna be stalling, or I'm gonna be taking 3 hours to come on a runabout.
Would you prefer it be a hidden secret, like you didn't know this?
Yeah, then maybe I will probably start thinking, maybe they are just really having a bad day. But when I see the learner sign, I do get a little bit more frustrated than usual. This is not.
Did you?
Sorry, this is not just the L plate, right? I categorize too. So if there's a BMW behind me, I know that they're gonna driving right behind me and like not leaving much of a gap. If it's a Mercedes, I know that they're not gonna let me in on the motorway. So it's all these little subtle signals, but there's a lot of reading.
You have a whole system.
Oh yeah.
You have an entire system based on. Okay, did you have a learner plate when you passed?
I did.
Took a moment to say that.
I passed.
Why did you do it?
After I passed, you mean?
Yeah.
No, I didn't. I didn't.
So before you passed, you
Before I
had an
passed
L
it, I
plate.
had an outlet.
Why? Because you had to.
No, because after I passed, I couldn't afford a car. So for the longest time, I just didn't drive.
It okay. Well, I don't know. Well, it's kind of funny. You've taken the trust. So the way my mind worked was that like the reason I thought they did it was so that you could understand and be like, I expect, like your expectations are, this is what I have to deal with. Yes, they will stall multiple times. Basically, it's a bear with me, have patience with me, because even a baby on board sign, they're probably not going to drive at the speeds that you want them to. They're probably not going to, you know what I mean? Once you've got that sign to say this car moves at a certain pace, it gives the what's the word? The impression of, hey, trust, please, I'm trusting you to understand or bear with me as I guess, go at this reduced pace to what you're used to. Um, Whereas you were just like, I don't care what sign you have. I don't care what vehicle you have. If I see this, I'm already disappointed. Which is I don't know. It's a different kind of mindset. I guess I didn't expect it, but I'm here for it anyways. But it does still, even if my mind works weirdly, I do think it still does tie in with like how essential trust still is as a part of our society. So if you think about everything we do, like every time you get on the road, signs on those signs on the back of cars, do you overtly or you no you kind of inherently think and have to trust that the majority of people in that road are competent enough to drive alongside you and not destroy your life, because we are driving like death vehicles. Like these are big, what was it, robot wars vehicles that could just smack into each other or be a bit mad. And people, and tell me if you felt this, do people get more aggressive in your mind when they're in a vehicle versus when they're outside of it?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Do you get more aggressive
No,
when you're in the
I'm
vehicle
actually
than when
I'm
you're
an
outside of it?
incredibly calm driver. I've had multiple people almost crashing
That's
into
picking
me,
himself up.
and I was just like, "Mm,
Do you trust the road?
yeah,
Like when you're driving, do you actually? Yeah, I think I'm just wondering because you're like, you said I've had multiple people almost crashing into you. That's a lot. I don't think I've had that experience. I've had a couple. I've had some, but I think they're anomalies. But it does still, I guess, rely on faith in the process of drivers that they've done driving tests, that the people who haven't are the ones who have failed. You have to have faith in the laws that will protect you once something happens. You have to have faith in your own insurance. You have to have faith in the leaders who we vote. Like the whole society is underpinned by trust, right?
well,
If you go down to just courtrooms, go ahead.
no, yeah, you're right." And uh, I mean, just taking it to a next level, even the currency that we use in this country or any other countries for that matter, it only works because people trust in it to be something that we can use
Mm,
to buy and sell and exchange. If that trust wasn't there, the
mm,
pound would be absolutely worthless. It's only because
hmm.
people believe in it.
That's what, like cryptocurrency, right?
Correct, yeah.
That came everyone's like, what? But because people believed in it, it exists. NFTs, it's becoming more and more like in your face how much it's underpinned by the trust factor, um, that things exist in total.
Yeah, and I think if you go back a few years, back in the days, currency used to be backed by something. So each country would have a certain amount of gold, and the currency would be aligned to that amount of gold. But now that's not the case anymore. So it's literally paper money. So you can print as much money as possible, which obviously increases inflation. But it only works because we keep believing that that's the way to exchange goods and services.
What type of things do you trust in? What are the different types of trust? Because if you think about it, that there's the trust in law, trust in society. I feel like that to me is like one umbrella, but there's more, because there's societal trust, but there's also personal ones, in my opinion. For instance, you can trust your friend. won't make a whole episode just targeted at your flaws. You can trust your partner, right? In certain aspects, you can trust your colleagues. Is there what other types of trust do you say there are? Does that really cover it all?
Well, those are the ones that come to mind. So you'll have the trust in terms of relationship. You'll have a trust in terms of like towards the law. You'll have a trust towards the government, which probably is slightly different as well. It's a very broad topic. It touches upon many different aspects of life, but I think the sentiment behind it is kind of the same across. It's it's probably us believing into the
Mm,
into what we're backing.
mm. Would you say trust is a cause or an effect?
I would probably say an effect. And the
Why
reason
is
why I
that?
say that is because trust typically, in my mind, is a result of an action or a result of something. We don't just trust people or trust a system at face value. We discussed it a few weeks back, probably like episode 19 or 20, when we were looking at Leaders Eat Last from Simon Sinek. That trust is
Mm,
something which is built, and it's something that comes around because the conditions are there for trust to be able to grow. And then when the chemicals come into play, so that's like the serotonin, the oxytocin, endorphins, and dopamine, when they come into play and they combine with one another, that's when you have that sort of like fuzzy feeling inside of you, which maybe you can classify as trust. But that's when you can start to rely on people, and you feel like you're okay, and you feel like they're not going to come around and stab you in the back.
yeah, that's pretty handy. I think it's weird. I feel like trust is discussed a lot. I can't pretend it isn't, right? I feel like if, at least if you're doing something right within your work or in your relationship, then trust maybe it's not discussed a lot, but it's really key. And so anytime you do a team workshop to try and like build a team, it's kind of centered around trust.
Hmm.
You do trust exercises and stuff like that. And then a relationship, if you remove trust, you kind of remove the relationship entirely, right? You're like, I don't trust them. So what, how can you be with them? That's the one thing you have to have in down. And that could be any type of relationship. Um, yeah, that's
But
the babies in general. Their whole existence is based on.
in my
Mhm.
mind, you do the trust exercise because you want to build trust, not because you got the trust in there in the first place.
Yeah, that's. I think that is the reason, right? Yeah, I'm not saying it's the after you do the trust exercise to build the trust, but you make sure if you're going to do any workshops, you're going to do it around surrounding trust, right? You have to work with the team. You have to find better ways to manage and be like, I can trust that they will do X, Y, and Z for me. I can trust that they will be as consistent as they can be, and that's where I'm like, I think you're right when you say it is an effect. Because I was thinking, is there cause and effect? Because the way we utilize the word trust, and maybe this is my mindset, is in the form of something that you have, and therefore you can do such and such. Well, I trust them, therefore I can do X, Y,
Mm.
Z. I leave my baby with them because they can babysit them because I trust them. And so you say it as if that's the cause, but that's an effect driven from multiple things. So when I think of trust, or when you think of trust, what would you say are like, and I'm going to make you scale it. You don't have to put them in any particular order, but you just have to name 5 attributes that are key. Although I feel like if you Google this, there's going to be like so many. So do not Google it. I want to hear what you personally think of. I can do the Googling if I want to, but I won't. Just tell me, yeah.
So it's interesting, right? So I'm going to take a slight tangent before I answer your question. So
Mm,
we're going through two quite significant events. The first event in the UK is that we've changed prime minister a few times in the past couple of months, and we've gone
mm,
through a series of decisions that were made in the government, which have taken us almost like 360 or 180, whichever one we want to describe it as, across
yeah.
decisions. And the reason why I mention this is because the very nature of making that 180 decision has taken trust away or has eroded trust from the individuals that were involved in this particular process. And if you think about like what has really happened, the issue is that there isn't a level of dependability or reliability that we've been able to put on those people that work for the government. And what that really summarizes it to is to the fact that we haven't seen the consistent level, the consistency between those people that were working in the government. So, like, namely, if you look at Liz Truss versus what
Liz
Sunak
Truss.
Sunak is doing, yeah, great name. And I think that that reliability is an element that affects trust and the way that trust is built.
Mm,
Now, the second event that I'm going to mention is where we currently are. There's a lot of talk about us heading into global recession, which is probably quite likely going to be the case. And if you looked on the BBC in the last, what was it, in the last couple of weeks, there is even sort of like doom case scenarios whereby there is an estimate that the worst case could be that we are in a recession for 2 years. Now, if anyone is wondering what a recession is, that's when I think it's defined as when the economy shrinks for 2 quarters on a row or something like that. But as a consequence of that, there is a lot of things that happen, such as people losing their jobs, people spend less money because they spend less money, businesses can't afford to stay afloat, etc., etc. Now, because businesses are having to deal with such difficult decisions, they sometimes end up cutting jobs, and because they cut jobs, they end up communicating that to the workers or to the employees. The issue is that it's not done in a very transparent way, and when
mm,
things are not done transparently, that also is a factor that affects trust. So we talked about reliability. We talked about transparency. If I were to name a couple of other things on top of my head, one probably is competence. Like, if you're not competent, people will not have trust in you. Probably I could point you back to the
mm.
government decisions. And the other one that is probably going to be affecting trust quite a lot is fairness. And I think we see this a lot with the activities which are being carried out now or in the past year around implementing diversity in the workplace or implementing diversity in different organizations. We look for a way to ensure that everyone is treated equally, but also everybody is being treated um, in a way which is fair. And I think when fairness is not there, then that gives way for people to be mistrusting and for not trusting, for example, the managers, or not trusting their team leaders or the people around them. So I think those are probably like the four factors that come top of mind with a few examples from what is happening in the world.
Recency, yeah. It's kind of interesting. I like reliability, transparency, competency, and then fairness. Fairness is a funny one because I was like, I don't know. I never really thought about fairness and trust. I feel like reliability includes honesty, but I'm just throwing that in, so you could tell me if I'm wrong there. But when it comes to fairness, I think of these two people I knew. No. And in ways, I'm not gonna lie, they were both kind of hypocrites. But the way in which they were hypocrites to me was just so different in how much I could quote unquote trust them. So, person A, they will say something. Maybe the word isn't hypocrite, but they'd say something, and then when you catch them doing the opposite of what they themselves said, they deny ever having done it. Having said that, like, what are you on about? That wasn't me. It's impossible. Blah
Isn't
blah blah.
that gaslighting?
That's potentially it's gaslighting. Yeah, it might be gaslighting, but they just to deny it to the grave. Like, that was not. Nope, never. Person B would say something, and you catch them, and they'd be like, "So, just what and what? Yeah, and so." Like, they didn't care. But it was kind of funny because person B, for myself, is someone I can more or less trust. That they might be unfair, they might be inconsistent, but I knew that they wouldn't lie. And to me, that made a huge difference. It'd be like, "What are you doing? You literally just said we can never do this." It was like, "Yeah, and what I'm doing." It's like, well, they didn't say they're not doing it. Like it was so weird. Like interacting with these two, and it was. And is that the correct word? Is it hypocrisy where they do the thing
Yeah, no, it's
they're
correct.
advocating against? Yeah, but it's funny because you think that on the scale of hypocrisy, any form of it would be just no. But in this case, it was like, well, if I'm going to have to go between the two of you, I'd probably much more rather go to the person who you can trust will not deny it. I think, and that's why I said is honesty part of reliability, and that's why I'm like, it wasn't fair. I don't think hypocrisy is fair, right? But it was still something that allowed me to underpin it with that's the person I could go with. But I guess that's to the best of a bad situation. I do like your description there. Go ahead.
No, I think you're onto something there though, because someone you provided a true example. Person A denies ever saying that, and person B kind of saying so. Probably that's still not great, but you could have someone being a hypocrite and then coming back to you and saying, yeah, you're right. I did say I was never going to do it, but I ended up doing it. But admitting to that, it's almost like opening up and being vulnerable to something that you've done wrong and letting the other person know that you are capable of making mistakes. I remember there was a few years back, when I was first joining Amazon, there was this leadership principle that referred to something called opening up your kimono. And I think what he really tried to embody in that sentence was opening up to the idea that you're wrong and making yourself vulnerable to others. And I think that is an element of showing that you are human, and because you're human, you are able to earn trust with other people. So I do understand why you would trust person two more than you would trust person one.
Okay. So then here's a more. Well, actually, it's an optional question. You have two options in this question. You can either tell me about a time you've had someone lose trust in you, or you can tell me about a time you've witnessed someone lose trust in someone else.
Okay, now we take a break.
You're like, I lost trust in you the moment you asked me that question, man.
um, so I think an easy one to identify for me is probably an answer to the first question. And
Mm.
it's really easy to maintain trust with people at work, I think. There is always that sort of extrinsic motivation that if you don't do something right, then someone will come around and probably, you know, chop your legs or give you disciplinary or whatever. And I think it's a lot easier to lose trust with family and to do something which is not quite right, and causing you to lose trust with them. So probably top of my head, what comes up as an example was one particular time when I went camping, and I was in the middle of the Welsh countryside, very very limited reception. And what I decided to do, and thought that it would be a good idea, was to keep my commitments to carry out some interviews for the company I was working for, and in doing so, taking away time from my holiday, which of course wasn't just me, or wasn't just affecting me, but was also affecting my other half. And in doing that, of course, it kind of almost highlighted I care more about work than I care about spending time with my own family. And given that we only take so many holidays a year, and when we do take holidays, we want to make sure that we spend that time in a purposeful way. Doing, even if it was just one, it was literally just one interview. Doing that one interview wasn't the right thing for me to do, and that caused me to lose trust because I was inconsistent between um, what I portray my priorities to be and what I actually ended up doing during that one particular holiday.
Okay, that's a thank you for sharing that answer. Yeah, I gave you an easier option. You chose to talk about yourself. I said choose if someone else. You're like, oh, let me talk about me. One thing though is taking from your previous answer where you was like it's fairness, competency, transparency, and reliability. I think that one falls in the reliability section. But also you've raised something else, which is consistency, right? And when you said about the workplace is relatively easy, it's because you can start inconsistent, but you can always gain trust over time as long as you gain that consistency and you utilize these skills with people that you meet. First impressions are a big thing, partners, otherwise, whatever. So you could lose trust immediately, or you don't get as much of an opportunity unless they're a recurring person in your, you know what I mean, in your life. And that's where it's a bit hard to, I guess, maintain it. The funny thing is, I wanted to know about lose trust to see what would it take to break trust. Is it that you remove any one of those four items you said? But to me, and please tell me if you see it any differently, trust and habit building are weirdly aligned because to build a habit, it's like that automation, you have to trust yourself. And so there's a lot of things you do, right? You be consistent, um, you review, you plan, you do all these things to make sure that you can trust yourself in a manner of speaking, right? You do all these things to be like, at some point, once it's become a fresh habit, you've instilled trust in your own self to do something that you've agreed or that you wanted to do. Do you see where I'm coming from?
I see where you're coming from, um, but I think when it comes to habits, it's much more with the action and the almost like the biological change that we end up having in our brain. Because by building a habit, you make the action automatic, and it's what makes the action automatic that makes it
Mm.
repeatable day in and day out. So it's much less of a conscious effort over time, and because it's much less of a conscious effort, I think it's quite unrelated from it being a matter of you trusting yourself.
I think I agree there, although I question when you trust someone, is that a conscious effort?
No, but I still don't think it's related to habit building.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I won't say it's related to habit building. I do think, though, you take, I don't know, if you maybe it's not related. I'm not even going to try and push it to be. Though I do think if you build a habit, you can become trustworthy in something due to all the ways that you've gone about it in terms of the personality, the things you had to do to maintain said habit. And then for someone to trust you, they've had to see certain characteristics, be it your reliability, how transparent and honest you are, how competent you are, how fair you are on a consistent basis. Therefore, they will watch you with this automation that is now part of your change or transformation. And what would make them, I don't know the word is, I guess, untrusting of you has suddenly become, I guess, easier to believe in. But okay, if even if it isn't a habit, I don't mind if it's not. I'm just curious. Um, how do you gain trust in yourself? Have you ever lost trust in yourself? Have you always trusted yourself, especially around good food?
um, I don't know. I always found the concept of like trusting yourself a little bit like far fetched. Like I never fully really comprehended it, to be honest with you. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I've had people in the past tell me like trust yourself, and I always thought it was a bit of a pile of rubbish, to be honest with you.
Please elaborate. I'm curious. Why? What makes you think it's a pile of rubbish?
um, I think it's because the whole concept of trusting someone is it's based on trusting them because uh, their behavior is consistent, or because what they're doing is aligned with their value, or because they haven't given you reason to mistrust you. And I always find that that concept of trust yourself is given to you when you are having to make decisions, or when you're having to make some changes in your life, maybe, or maybe you're leading a project and your manager's got enough of you and tells you, trust yourself, stop asking me questions.
Trust your own decisions, yeah.
I know.
But isn't that, how is it still far fetched if you have to? Because I'm curious. This one I'm not sure I agree with, purely based on okay, to drive anywhere you've had to trust yourself already. But if you take it to the work context and you are put in responsible, given a position of responsibility for anything, and then told trust yourself, you then do whatever you do to make sure that you can trust yourself. Be it read, prep, whatever it takes, be it lead it and follow it through. You have to, quote unquote, trust yourself to then proceed. You can not trust yourself, but if you don't, how would you react to someone you don't trust? You wouldn't let them do it. You'd push it off to someone else. You do all these things to make it, I don't trust them. And so for me, I'm like, there's a lot of people who don't trust themselves. There's a lot of people who remove things from their entire state of being. Like, I can't trust myself around a cigarette, alcohol, X type of food, X type of person. That is such a common statement too. Um, and so that's why I think it's kind of important, based on the fact that if you ignore trusting yourself, or the fact that you have to do it so often, you kind of remove control of some things. Like, nah, I don't have to trust myself. Okay, cool. How do you run a half marathon without trusting that you're going to do every step of the training to get to that point? Maybe you just don't do no training. You just know that you'll do it. Well, I don't know. That's why I'm like,
It sounds like
uh,
it's more of a question of do you have self restraint?
dependent. Well, okay. Elaborate.
Well, you've been talking about like trusting yourself around food, or trusting yourself around a particular person. So when you were talking those things out loud, I think in my mind it rang a bell for um, do you have self
Self
restraint
restraint.
on these particular topics? I think running a marathon, I don't think it's got anything to do with self belief. I think it's just got to do with having done the miles and having done the training. I don't know. I don't really ask myself the question of have you got do I believe in myself when I went to run the half marathon?
You don't know. Wait, you in general don't ask yourself if you believe in yourself.
Not particularly, no, to be honest.
That's wild. I don't I think you know what's funny? I think you know that when I'm about to do something, or most of my answers, which is very egotistical, for a number of items will just be I'm Mark J. Or I'll just say my name. And that it for me actually embodies a lot of just um this character, or who I am presenting as, or the person I want to be is this person. Therefore I have to trust in that. But the fact that you don't do that, that's your that's a different one. One thing I'd like to just address though is you said it's about restraint, which I can't dispute for a number of them. But I also did mention the work environment, and how is that about restraint? If your boss tells you trust yourself, and you don't agree that that's a thing, but then you go about, like, to me, it's the thing that gets me is anytime you've put something down on the CV and applied to a role in any company, if you don't trust that you're able to achieve that job or do any of that, I don't see how, unless you're really planning to lie about it, how you don't have any trust in yourself or even consider it as a concept. For me, that's just a whole different.
Well, for me, so for me, going back to the workplace one, right? So if a manager tells me trust myself, to me that translates to I've got the skill to do it. I just need to ask the right questions. To me, it doesn't come down to the me having to trust in
You
my.
break it down.
Maybe I just skip the trust yourself and I go on to the next layer down, but I don't dwell
Yeah.
around my philosophical way of trusting myself. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, I don't think I do that any that depth for. I think this is why I think trust is such an interesting concept, because I think that's why I asked, is it cause and effect, how it builds in our society? Because I'm like, I can't say that we do not talk about it. We do, but even there in your examples of how it's like, I don't even feel like it's something that, you do, is interesting because it's not something you even address. It's said all the time. It's like build trust in your team, and you can describe it when it's other people. But when it comes to yourself, you're like, I don't even think of that. And it's true. If someone says trust myself, I'm like, okay, I have work to do. But it's not me saying, I know, trust myself. I don't think I overtly say it. I do say, like I said, my name, uh, which kind of embodies things, and it will become like a, what's the word? Like a substitute in a sense, because I'm just like, I want this, but it's not the same. And it's kind of, I wonder how many people do.
See, just as an example, right? Because you've asked me, what would I think if my manager told me to trust myself? So I've had instances where my reports have come to me and questioned themselves. They were unsure about what they were doing. They let's say they lack that trust in their own ability. Let's put it that way.
Hmm.
And I don't tell them, "Oh, trust yourself, you got the answer." What I do is I ask them questions, open-ended questions, wait for the answer, and then tell them, "See, you answered this, so you know what to do. Just crack on with it."
Okay. Oh, so is that why you think if they say that, it's because they don't know, or they're just trying to, I guess, faff off? Like, this is deal with it yourself, basically.
It's what I found from my experience as a manager is that the majority of the time people do know what the answer is and they do know how to do things, especially once they've been in a role for a decent amount of time, and all they might need at time is just for themselves to think through the situation and come up with their own answers. So that's why I ask them the open-ended question and wait for the answer. And the reason why I do that is just to prove to them that they can do it. So maybe, yeah, in a manner of speaking, they are kind of proving to themselves that they can trust their own judgment. But to
Hmm.
to me, I guess, and I never thought of it that way. I never thought of it as a way of getting them to trust themselves, or as a way of me to trust myself. I kind of never thought of it as that concept.
You know what I like about that though is that up until now, I didn't even consider that people would be like, I don't even believe in trusting yourself. Up until this very moment, I was like, oh, people just out here like, yo, what do you want about? I trust you, I trust her, and I don't know about me. I just do things
I trust my
that get me
mama.
to
I trust my
the.
papa.
And I'm like, oh, that's an option. Just don't even consider it. I do think this. I think what's important about this, and this is why I like this podcast in general, is that regardless, I think the same actions are what matter, right? Even if you ignore the whole trust yourself, like, okay, no, I'm not going to do that. But it's even when I'm discussing, like, oh, even if I believe in it, what does it mean? And that's why we start with, is it cause and effect? And it's like, okay, what do you do to make sure that even if you're not thinking, I trust myself, but you're just like, I have, in some cases, restraint. And that's a character trait. Or I have curiosity, I have the determination, I'm an honest person. It's the, I guess it's the key things that maybe from an outsider is that. And it's kind of, I think when I think of musicians, um, I had friends, and I think I mentioned, who are perfectionists. So they'll make stuff that is great, but it's never good enough. And it's like, why? What is that purpose? So for me, it's very easy to be like, trust yourself. That's it. Just put it out there. You know what I
Well,
mean?
sounds like
But
what I
it
was telling you
maybe
about Reels on Instagram. Mark, trust yourself. Just put
this
him
is
out
no longer
there.
your episode. This is not your episode. You don't get to talk about that. I'm gonna cut that out this episode. Maybe, I don't know.
I've got the video
I'll edit.
footage.
You got the video. I'll still cut it out the audio. No one needs to know. Don't you make this into a real? Don't you dare make this into a real? But yeah, I think it's still in all versions of it. However you like your information, however you like to hear or understand it, you ask them questions, and by asking them questions that they then are able to answer from an observant point of view, there was someone who didn't trust themselves and then did trust themselves. And I think one thing that we've not really explained, and I'm looking it up right now as we talk, is what does trust mean? Like, what is the definition of trust?
You tell me, Mr. Google.
You don't even have an answer. I've got four. I've got two really, or two nouns and two verbs, but I'll go through them. So one, the firm belief in the reliability, truth. Why you gonna have truth and trust, or ability of someone or something? Or two, law, an arrangement whereby a person, trustee, holds property. Let's not get into that. Believe in the reliability, truth, or ability of. And so this is why, for me, it's kind of weirdly a different concept to say you don't trust yourself. It's how can you not have that? It's just unreliable. You know what I mean? And it break down the foundations. But that's just my English. I think in its essence, if it's just a firm belief in the reliability, truth, or ability, and you just take that and say, I have the ability, I am honest, and I am reliable. Funnily enough, the first thing you mentioned about which incorporated our current political climate and about reliability was spot on. It's like that's the main thing. It's you have to have that, and I guess that's why I thought, oh, habits, but maybe not. Maybe not. In any case, for yourself, I guess. And I'm scared to ask you questions. You're a wild card in this. um, when was, and this is a very quick one, when was the last time someone earned your trust?
And now you can hear the crickets in the background of the field.
No one's, you've never trusted anyone in your life.
um, last time probably goes back probably about a year and a
1984.
half ago. So
Okay. What happened a year? Do you want to share?
what
You don't have
did
to.
you say? Earned my trust, right? Oh,
Yes,
it's just
earned
like
your trust.
it's just someone that I could think of that I met in the last year and a half, and through.
You don't have to say what they did. You can just say the attributes they showed if it's easier.
No, I think it was just a matter of getting to know the person over time and just like finding out, I guess, how much of a reliable person they were, or the fact that they were able to open up with me and myself open up with them, so that we have the sort of that transparency. I think that's what helped to build that trust. But
Hmm.
also, I found it really interesting that we spoken for 44 minutes about trust, or give or take, and that the term of integrity hasn't come up at all in the conversation.
Very true. But why do you find that interesting? What about integrity do you think ties in with trust?
So when I attended Landmark Forum 2-3 years ago, one of the things I've really banged on about in this forum is that as people, we are supposed to be showing integrity. And if we don't
Hmm.
show integrity and we don't keep to our own word, then we're nobody. And the whole integrity, which is, I guess, how honest and how strongly you keep to your moral principle, kind of shows the person that you are. And I guess with that, then you could say that if you got high integrity, it also means that you end up in a space where you align your action with what you believe. You become some sort of a person or a figure that is consistent, and those are all the sort of qualities that we were talking about earlier that do help with building trust.
I don't even consider integrity. I'm not even going to lie. Is trust integrity? I'm not going to look that up. It is a interesting link that you say, and it didn't. Though it's kind of funny. You say we've been talking about this long. I gave you the options of what you constitute trust. You didn't even pull that in as one of your own options. You're like, why wasn't this mentioned by myself ever? I was even considering how hypocrisy and integrity might be like polar opposites, right? If you're able to be a hypocrite, then where's your integrity?
Mark, I
But,
didn't I didn't mention it because I was hoping you would be adding some value to the episode.
but yeah, yeah, and none of the audience believes you. None of the audience believes you in your lies. Yeah, the reason was Mark didn't do it. That's why I didn't do it. This is that. Remember, I said there was person A. Hi, hi, Val. But no, it's a good call out. I'm not sure. Okay. Anyways, I guess for me, the main thing for me was about trust underpins a lot. And please do share if you feel like trust in yourself is a fallacy, whereas trust in every other thing isn't. I'm curious to hear what the audience has to say. But in my mind, trust underpins a lot. And in terms of, and once you know how important it is, um, I like the idea of not so dissecting, but understanding these values and one appreciating them more in other people, um, and then showcasing them where you can to then build your trust. And that way, well, is there any downside to being trusted? Like honestly, or to seeing where you are realizing where you can or can't trust other people, and what underpins your I guess a lot of your views and a lot of your actions, because I do think trust is a big part of how we approach things, right? I can't trust this hotel, I'm never going there again. I can trust this channel to play good music or show me a good show, and it kind of guides so much of what we do without being as, even though it's mentioned, it's never really mentioned, you know what I mean? If you go cinema, trust that film's gonna be good. I think it's just an interesting one. But I think that's, yeah. Unless you have anything to add, I'll wrap up here.
Now you get to wrap up.
All right. Well, yeah. This has been of course, another episode of the Needle Movers podcast. On this episode, I just picked Val's brain about trust and saw he doesn't even believe in it. It's not even true. It's all a fantasy. It's all a lie. But yeah, if you want to find us, we're on our website at theneedlemovers.xyz or Z for those in the UK. The.needle.movers on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, social media, etc. And yeah, I've been, of course, your host, Mark Jasons, and my co-host, as always,
Valerio Tommaso, and till next time.
adios.